Well, from our healthystate.org partners now, some reflections on mental illness. Reporter Delia Colon tells us what's next.
History once stigmatized people with epilepsy as witches. Not long ago, the word cancer was said in a whisper. Often still stigmatized are mental illnesses and those who suffer from them. Some still argue that mental illness can be overcome through sheer willpower. But just as willpower cannot cure kidney failure or heart disease, neither can it overcome a physiological condition of the brain.
When I'm speaking and talk about my condition, is I tell people, this has nothing to do with the way my mother treated me when I was a child. There's something physical going on. There are situational depressions, where because of a situation we're depressed. There are emotional problems that might be rooted in childhood trauma and things of that nature. But there's also a disease called mental illness. It's proven.
This is a national epidemic. It's an international epidemic. And so I think gradually it will change as it gets more notoriety and more people start coming out. People who we know, the Brooke Shields and the Gwyneth Paltrows, to say, I suffered from this too.
There is a stigma still associated with mental illness, and part of it is people don't realize that mental disorders are diseases. They may be called disorders, but they are diseases, and they have a biochemical and a molecular basis, and they are treatable.
We think of depression and other mental illnesses to be on a spectrum, and you think of people committing suicide in the context of major depression and how that worsens over time. And if you would have just caught it earlier, maybe they would have, gotten treatment.
I lost my son Christopher at the age of 25, a little over 2 years ago. He had hung himself using an extension cord. He was always super high or super low, and I feel so stupid for not knowing, but I just didn't know. I mean, his dad was an extremist, real high energy, and I just attributed that to personality traits. And he never showed me the severe depression. It was just a good mood or a bad mood. But then the key final straw is when his father passed away, my husband, 5.5 weeks before Chris took his life.
There's a certain amount of resiliency that we all have to be able to respond to a bad situation and be down for a while, cope with things, and then come back up to that baseline where we kind of all live. But some people don't seem to have that ability.
About 3 weeks before, I asked Christopher, I said, Christopher, you're really having a hard time with your dad's loss, and I understand that. I said, you really need to go see a counselor. And he said, no, I can't afford it. And I said, I'll pay for it. I said, I don't care, please go get help. And he said, no.
It's probably because it's shameful to admit still that you have mental illness. It's shameful to ask for help. And I think that's one of the kind of most important things that we need to start changing.
In our brain, we have lots of proteins, chemicals, etc. And they work in harmony to mediate behaviors. Everything that we do in life is mediated by our brain chemistry, what goes on in our head. We have neurotransmitters. Our brain is composed of neurons and supportive and other cells, glial cells in particular. Neurons have to talk to each other. They talk to each other by means of neurotransmitters, chemicals. And so when these chemicals are abnormal, if they're not being made in the right amounts, if the way they work is not right, the receptors that they interact with, then behaviors can be affected.
If you're limping and all of a sudden your foot hurts and you don't know a reason why, you go to the doctor and check it out because you don't want the pain. If you have these feelings of depression that are abnormal, they're dysfunctional, they're not related to anything that's really going on in your life, go get treated.
Hopefully not in the too distant future. People will understand mental diseases. They will understand the genetic predispositions. They'll understand epigenetic phenomena, which is how the environment can impact your genes and then the proteins that your brain makes. And once the public understands, we will be so far ahead of where we are now.
An estimated 20 to 30% of people will suffer from depression in their lifetime. Experts say the earlier it's diagnosed, the easier it is to treat.